welcome, Dr. Ash, to near 1%, or next actually 1%. Even I've got the subject wrong. And today, Ash is going to be talking about something adjacent to his normal day job. And his normal day job is that of being a chiropractor. And he is very, very, very good at this job. But we won't sort of dwell too much on that. What we want to really get into is he's gone to this adjacent market, which is about brain plasticity and how you can improve your life, or in fact, many people's lives, as a result of using his technology and science. So it's all medically proven. Now, let me throw to Ash so he can give you much better information than I can. Now, Ash, tell us all about it.
Okay, well, what I've branched into is a field of basically it's called functional neurology. So it's how your neurology is functioning. That goes to how your brain functions. The object is to get your brain functioning at its best or at its optimum. Now, when we have problems such as high anxiety, which is very prevalent in today's society, our brains tend to go too fast when we're looking at the brain and a map, that it tends to go too fast in certain areas, particularly in the frontal lobes, which is the front of your head, where we have executive function and our focus. So what happens is it's firing too much. So we've got to work out ways of helping the brain to function at its optimum, which is firing a little bit slower, but with pinpoint accuracy and focus.
Have you seen, just to jump in, sorry, Ash, have you read the book Fast, Slow Thinking?
No, I have not.
Okay, so there's a sort of a new, recently new management guru thing, which is identical to what you've just been talking about.
Right.
And
Yeah, well,
it's trying to make it so you're actually, fast thinking is too much emotion. You might be shooting from the hip, you're angry. That's fast thinking. Slow thinking is where you act with greater care and more likely to make better decisions. Is that your world?
Yes, it is. I think just on a side note, I've been involved in martial arts for a lot of years and sport's been a massive background for me. So I've always been into being in that zone where you're able to function at your best without having that fear and be able to think clearly so you can see what's coming in, be able to deal with it, do what you need to do, then recover quickly. And this is absolutely what we need to do through every aspect of our lives, not just on a sporting field, but we need to apply that to what we do every day. And that's what I see with my patients. And that's what I've seen for a lot of years is how they present themselves in a very anxious manner, or they've got what their ADHD where they can't focus, or they have problems from like PTSD, like post-traumatic stress disorders. It's those things that we're talking about, the brain racing too fast or going too slow. So too slow is things like depression, people with issues such as an auditory problem where they can't think properly and have the right language from what they hear. So that's coming down to dyslexia type situation. So you see the brain going too slow. So in my field, what I've been able to do is get onto what's called EEG, electroencephalograph. Now, what that does, it allows me to map the brain. So we can actually map those areas.
So that's really about putting on electrodes, a cap,
yes,
bit like a bathing cap. It's got
it is. Yeah,
these little things hanging out, the wires hanging out, and that takes you to a device that measures the speed of your brain.
Exactly. So it measures, like everyone's probably heard about different waves, like you've got your delta waves, your theta waves, your alpha waves, your beta waves, and even gamma, which is high beta in some other ways. But those waves is what we measure. So it measures the activity. Faster wave is higher along. A slower wave is lower. So now it doesn't mean having slow waves is perfect, because sometimes you need to have fast waves to be able to function. So a lot of the brain mapping's got to do with looking how it works at those different wavelengths, and is it functioning at its best? So for me to understand, well, how do I get to work out a protocol to help people? We need to look at your symptoms. What's happened to you? What you're presenting with? How's it affecting your function? And then I match that with those particular wavelengths on those different parts of your brain. So we map the brain. So there's different areas of the brain which are called Broadman areas that have different functions. So for everyone to understand that, we just go, well, this area here needs to function with this area here for us to be able to get good focus. So
if I could summarize that, and hopefully help the viewers, but really we're saying is, look, if we know what you think's wrong with you, or that you know that you're depressed, you're this, you're that, you've got a whole lot of life situations that are going on, you're having a divorce, and whatever other stresses are going on in your life, and match that to your current brain activity.
Correct, yes.
There is a chance to, if you like, find a solution to
Right, yeah.
unpick those problems and get the brain retuned to operate at the optimum level again.
Yeah.
Is that a good
to do
summary?
that, is because that's what we're trying to do, is so you can not have the same reactive brain. Like when you're under a lot of stress, your brain's quite reactive, and when you get frustrated and you find it very hard to focus, and most people start swearing a lot more and doing behaviors they don't particularly like, and even becoming addictive because they're trying to feel relief from how their brain's acting. So addiction's part of is part of a whole protocol as well, because it's you trying to feel better. That's all we try to do, is we run away from pain and we go towards pleasure. And to do that, we need to have a brain that's nicely balanced, so we don't actually go to the bad things. So to get that relief.
Could I pose another question then? Let's just say that you're
Sure.
in a relationship, and your partner is highly aggressive, and you're under some stress, because you can't seem to change activity. So
Right.
if you were able to persuade your partner in some way, you got to come and see Dr. Ash, or else, is there a chance that that can also be the brain can be recalibrated?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, because the aggressive behavior is usually a reaction to some sort of trigger in the environment, because you're already preempting something that could happen. It's usually what could happen. That's why most people react in a fearful state, because they are worried about what's going to happen to them. So they fight.
Yes.
So that aggressive behavior is quite, it's actually quite normal when your brain's not normal, if you know what I mean. So
Yes.
it's you
It's a
trying to
symptom
protect
of
yourself.
a problem.
Exactly. So what we do with the brain mapping in that case, we look at those areas of the brain that are creating that trigger, right? So why is your brain fired up, and you get this input and all of a sudden you respond? So we look at what's called a normative database, which is based on a bunch of population that have got very well healthy functioning brains. And we look to see, well, this is the middle of this big curve of people functioning normal and optimal. So what we do is train the brain, either if it's under firing to go to that point, if it's over firing, we can bring it back down to that point. So then you've got that optimum function. So while you've got the cap on, we exercise your brain. It's actually brain training, which is quite interesting, that it's like going to the gym, working out.
Yeah.
You
It's
got
the
to work
brain gym.
yourself. The brain gym, yeah, that's a good analogy for it, because you have to do regular sort of exercise, work those neurons, get them to what's called utilize neuroplasticity, which is the ability to form new neural pathways, change old ones. So you can have negative pathways and positive pathways. The negative ones are giving you negative behavior. The positive ones are what you want. It's to be able to be in control. So we work towards getting the best solution, but you have the cap on and it's real-time feedback. So you're watching a screen and you see a plane. I use different sorts of things, but this is an example.
So this is
A plane
stimulus
flying.
to the person while you're testing them.
Well, not even testing, it's actually the training. So
Oh,
I've set
okay.
up the protocol, right? You've got this round circle, this plane comes flying along. When your brain, you focus on the circle, when your brain is hitting all those points that we're trying to change to get into function at its peak, then it flies through the circle. Bang, your brain goes, oh, I do this and I get this reward. So it's like a Pavlov's dog, you're getting reward for your effort. And then you think, wow, I can do that. So you start doing that more and more. It just gives you stronger neural pathways.
So if I
So,
pose a question then, let's just say I'm the CEO of WorkSafe or TAC or some other, and doesn't have to be a government agency. I really wasn't, I just pulled those out of my hat. So that if you're
yeah.
listening, CEO of WorkSafe or, it's not a play. But um, yeah, so I've got a series of executives who seem to be very good at some things, and they've always got gaps. They're
Mm,
not they're great at this, but they're not great at that. There's always gaps. So could
right.
I, as the CEO, say, look, I want to enroll my top half a dozen CEO, general managers from my leadership team. I want you to A, test them. I want you to B, bring them to the center.
Yep.
Can be done or not?
Yes. Yes. Because you're mapping their symptoms with their brain. So you've got
Yep.
their symptoms, what's happening in your brain, how do they merge together? What's actually happening? It gives you a real picture of what's going on because you can't fix it if you can't find it is
Yep.
one of those things. And if you get a visual picture of what's going on, you know that that does correlate. So, and then you can monitor it as well. So this is where like this evidence base is so good because you've actually got a solid picture of what's going on and you can easily change it. So that's what we're trying to aim to is to get the best function. On
And
top of
I
that,
now
sorry.
keep going. Sorry.
Well, on top of that, we also do a thing called biofeedback, which is very similar. It's real time. It's a sensor on your skin, like this have put a sensor on your finger, and that helps with your what's called your autonomic nervous system. So helps you control yourself, your own physical uh, being in a sense. So that helps support the changes with the brain as well. So you can actually decrease your arousal levels. And this is really important for the type of people we're talking about at the moment because they're under high pressure. So they need to be able to get themselves calm so they can focus. While they're not calm, they're not able to focus properly. It's that overfiring we were talking about before. So what we want to do is be able them to be able to control their physiology as well as change their neurons in their brain. So you get two things supporting each other. So you can actually change the outcome. And that's what you see on a sporting field. The optimum play is someone who's able to control their physiology while under stress because
So
they can make the difference. They do the winning tries, they do the winning goals.
so premium or not premium, but high-end sport achievers, whether they be AFL, VFL, the Olympic Games, they're all not only are they physically fit to the absolute nth degree, but they have removed fear largely, and they think like winners. Is that a
Exactly
better way
right.
to put that? And what we're
And
really
they
talking
can
about here is helping leadership teams or
mm,
just mum and dad or, relationships or individuals move to a winning position, which is the optimum performance of their brain. And even
mhm.
though they haven't had that for maybe decades,
Yeah, that's
that
true.
could be the
Yeah.
case.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's a combination of both because you want to be able to be aware of what physiology is doing and be able to put yourself in a state that you're able to control what's going on. because most people, when they're in a fearful state, they tend to lose that control. The heart rate goes up, they start sweating, their their temperature decreases in their palms. They actually lose their peripheral blood flow because it's trying to protect their organs.
Yes.
And the reason you sweat, this is actually just on the side, is quite an interesting theory. But the belief is that you sweat because back in our primate days, we used to climb trees. So you sweat more to get grip.
Ah,
So that's part of that sweating. So you see people will sweat hard, but they'll have cold hands as well. They get cold and clammy. You often hear that.
hmm.
So you want to be able to control those states, and you want to be able to have your brain functioning so it doesn't actually kick the states off in the first place, hopefully. But if you can control that state, you actually still control your brain too. So this is where we talk mindset and not working your brain too hard, not going crazy with it, like trying to push too hard. It's just being in that focused, absolute, optimal functioning. And that's what it's all about. That's what you try to do, bring to everyone.
So I want to give you two examples and just see if we can pick up some problems, or not problems, some discussion around those. Let's just say that your BHP and the BHP board, any group of, we've talked about senior executives, but if we sort of step it up another level, is that board directors who are not members of the company as a rule, they are external directors, and they're brought there because of their experience, knowledge, etc. So if you are a director of a company, particularly the larger ones, can you use the same technique to, as the chair might say, all right, we want you all to go and see Dr. Ash. You're all going to get re-optimized. And after we've optimized the board, we're going to optimize the CEO. He or she needs a bit of optimizing, and then we're going to go down to the next level. So will that work?
Yeah, of course, because you're again, it's helping people maintain that optimum function. So it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in. It doesn't matter even age. There's it's not too late unless you have bad cognitive decline and it's not reversible. But there is definitely, if you're still living relatively well, you can actually make big changes. And look, CEOs, there's definitely a high level of stress they're under. So a lot of this we're doing is to help not just support the idea of working the brain, but it's also supporting what else is happening. So it's have you got a good diet? Is there inflammation in your system? Is your blood pressure high or low? Because that can affect the amount of oxygen going to your brain. Do you need more iron? Do you need to look at your cortisol levels and take things what's called adaptogens to keep the stress levels low? Do you need to look after your stomach? Because a lot of people don't realize that when you're under high stress, you tend to get IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. And that actually affects your brain. Your stomach's called the second brain. There's a enteric nervous
Yes.
system, which is part of the second brain. If you're not looking after what you're putting in there, and if it's getting inflamed, then you're actually affecting your brain because it's going to create inflammation. It's going to give you this feedback because of the second brain working with the main brain. It's going to affect your function. So it doesn't just limit you to just putting a cap on and working that and putting a sensor on. It's also looking at your lifestyle and exercising and keeping a well-balanced diet and not eating heaps of sugar. And alcohol is a big issue as well. If you look at any YouTube videos now, there's so much about the detrimental effects of alcohol. So it's getting those things under control and having things in moderation, but also looking at your brain health. We look at other things about our health, but we don't look after our brain. That's the last thing that people tend to think about.
So the next potential use, if I can put it this way, is when you're dealing with senior executives and CEOs and replacements and who might be the best CEO to choose from. You'll often put them through a series of psych tests, which is sort of online, multiple choice, and you can come back with sort of 20 pages of why they're good at some things and not good at other things. But could you use this to test their current performance or optimum performance? And if so, will there be some privacy issues, which I guess would be waved away by the potential CEO saying, well, I want the job, so I'll agree
Yeah.
to this. Is there a value sort of output, a report that the board could read or the CEO could read about a senior executive or
Oh,
not?
yeah, for sure. Look, what I do is what's called a qualitative analysis. So you actually analyze the actual brain map itself, tying that in with the symptoms, what these areas mean, what it means for function. The other thing is those questionnaires you're talking about. I definitely have questionnaires that are specifically designed with what I'm doing for the actual working out a protocol. So they are psychological questions
Yes,
because that's what we're dealing with. The brain the function of it is for you to have good psyche, and it's how you psychologically are primed. So that it is actually vital to understand if you're having a deficiency, can you improve it? And the
yes,
answer is yes, you can. Particularly when you're finding that it's actually lining up with the map of the brain as well. If you can say this is showing a deficiency, it might be executive function, it might be that you're having trouble with words, or you're having trouble with numbers. There's certain specific areas that you target with this work that you can help improve, and it can be emotional states too.
So what about likelihood? I mean, someone listening to this might say, oh, look, I've got a few spare bucks and I really want to, you know, tune myself back up to being high performance. So is there a likelihood that statistically 3% of the population can achieve this state, or 93% can achieve this state? Or, what is the likelihood of, for the want of a better word, success?
Look, I can talk from a clinical perspective. I have seen some massive changes with patients and they're coming with all sorts of things from concussion, post-traumatic stress disorders. Definitely high anxiety is one of the biggest issues that I deal with. Depression, and there's some other neurological issues that they've had, and I've seen some really good results. Um, the big part of it is that it is brain training. So you need to be able to stick to a protocol of doing regular focused training with the cap on, and doing the other things, and also changing of diet and all those things, because you want to support change. But I've seen I have seen some massive changes. Also, the percentage is definitely quite high. I'd be thinking you're looking around a 90% that you
That's
do
very
actually
good.
get a change.
Hmm.
The big thing you do see is that people they usually do about 5 or 6 training sessions per se with their hat on, and they tend to start to think, well, I'm starting to feel I'm not reacting like I was, or I'm sleeping better, or that doesn't bother me like it used to. And it's quite surprising. I would say the biggest thing I see is people that just are finding it so hard to get out there and socialize, and they're feeling very
Insecure.
worried and scared, insecure. And you can see a massive change. They come in as a different person. And I've done a lot with teenage kids, which I think COVID's had a big impact. And they're usually from year 10 up to year 12. And the changes I've seen is that they've gone through a stage where they don't want to socialize, they don't want to go to school, they won't go to parties, their grades have gone down, and they're just not functioning. They're spending more time in welfare than they are in the classroom. And I see this change. They come in and now they're actually socializing. Their grades are going up. They're attending school. And the things I hear is parents saying, "I've got my little girl back. I've got my little boy back again." And that's massive to see
It
that
it
sort of change.
is. And does that
Yeah.
same thing apply to, say, university students, or, parents
Yes.
obviously
Yes.
are always parents, so
Yeah.
it's relative
Oh,
to.
definitely. Yeah. Uni students, and even parents of these kids tend to be going through a lot of stress themselves.
Yes.
And in fact, they start reliving a bit of the old problems, and they start showing signs of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders, because their resilience is decreased because they're under so much pressure and they're so worried about their child as well.
Yes.
So I tend to be dealing with both ends in that case, that you're
And
dealing with parents as well as the child.
what sort of time limits, not time limits, but time periods, from go to woe, if you like, from the start to the end? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking years? Are we talking months? What would you traditionally say is a typical period?
Typical period I've found is about 10 weeks where you're getting a change, and I've mapped them. So I've actually got hard evidence to show that there is a change. And I also go back through these questionnaires you were talking about. So you get a measure of psychologically what's happened, and you see a reduction in their symptoms, which is hard evidence, plus the map changes where it's actually functioning at a more optimal level. And I'd be surprised if there's no change in 10 weeks. I haven't seen a case where there's not been a change in the positive. So
So really,
it's
for everyone out there who's, is thinking about, am I, or, I'm not, you know, suitable for me, no doubt you'll take some calls and all those sorts of things. So how would they, how will people find you, Dr. Ash? I mean, we could have people here from the US or anywhere. So,
oh, yeah.
what's the best way to contact you?
Well, you can actually get on to, I've got a website which is written behind me here, the Healthy Brain Clinic,
Oh, so
and that's
www.thehealthybrainclinic.
thehealthybrainclinic.com. So you can get onto that. That'll lead you to, you can actually book appointments. You can get on to me via that way to send a message, and you can, there's even phone numbers so you can ring. We can have a direct talk.
Yep.
I like to have a chat to people before they come in, just because you want to make sure that you feel you can make a change for them. So you still got to make sure we're a match.
Yep.
And so it is good to have a bit of a chat to say, well, this is my issue, this is where I'm at, this is how long, these are the symptoms. And at least then we can start even discussing, look, before you even come in, let's start changing your diet right away, or let's get you on to exercise, or you better start hydrating more, just from what they're telling you over the phone, so you can actually start them on the road to recovery straight away.
Yep.
So it's good to have a bit of discussion, and also they can ask questions directly as well.
So one of the things that we do in this sort of live cast is ask people, if you could talk to yourself 20 or 30 years ago, and sort of talk to yourself and say, what would I do differently, having now seen the last 30 years? I would tell a younger version of Ash. Now, the
Yeah.
reason this is interesting is because a lot of people think, oh, if I knew that, I wouldn't do it again. So sometimes people listening sort of say, oh, that's a great answer. I must make sure
Mm.
I don't go down that path. Have you got some tips there about what you would tell a younger Ash that would help others?
Yeah, I've got a few. Like, I would definitely encourage myself to continue on the path that I was on with studying. I'd actually push myself to do this work earlier,
Yep.
because um, it's such a big field and there's so much to learn. And the impact you have on people's lives is so great that it's like you've missed out, but
Yes.
life's a journey. So it's probably taken me to this point to be mature enough to understand what I'm doing. Um, the other thing I'd be talking in a business sense, I don't know what you've found, but when you run your own business, you tend to look after your staff. Um, you tend to be in the day-to-day running and just so headstrong in that, and you get lost in your own work. You actually forget to look after yourself. So I'd be saying, look, get a bit more life balance, but I think part of that is financial balance as well. Don't just throw everything into the business. Start investing early. I think I missed a boat on a few occasions. So you look back, and particularly in real estate market, you've blown some things you could have bought earlier. So I'd be telling myself to look after my future a little more. Think a little bit more for your own self as you go on, and use your business to that advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not on, it's very common because most small and medium business owners have only got there through a bit of hard work, and that normally means it's, they're doing their long hours, their long days, and
Yeah.
they're into the grind, and so the grind doesn't often leave an opportunity for hours each week to sort of say, oh, well, I wonder if I used X dollars and did this. So it's a relatively common event, and I
Mm.
think particularly Australians are not very big with financial planners or that sort of market. They're very dubious of of that group. So it's a very common point you make.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll definitely be pushing myself to use the smarts and actually use the financial planners and follow advice better. Um, but it is hard. Like you look back and you think, oh, I should have done this, should have done that. But it in reality is where you are now is probably the perfect place for you anyway. So you can't you sometimes those things you didn't do motivate you to push yourself further. So it's a very hard thing to know what to say to yourself when you're younger. I'll probably drive myself crazy by being so enthusiastic about everything. So um
Well,
yeah,
well,
so it's
so if we summarize that, you've got education, always keep learning, I guess
yep,
is one of the points that you'd make. Never stop learning something new. Make sure you invest time for yourself. So you've got to pay yourself as
yep,
well as pay the business. And certainly rethink about the idea personally about fast brain, fast, slow thinking, which is the name of
yes.
that book.
Yeah.
And
That's a good book. I'm gonna get onto that.
yeah, I only just saw that the other day. Well, Dr. Ash, we've come to the end of our interview, and thank you very much for your time and your effort. I think everyone will gain a lot out of this. And in fact, I can imagine that to be a lot of people who'd say, I think I need to talk to Dr. Ash.
Yeah, yeah, well, I think years back it would have been good to meet myself to use it on myself to get myself thinking straight back then. But no, but thank you for your time, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your